Waves of Steel is a game that released on the 21st of July this year, that being 2021, and it's being developed by a small studio called TMA Games. As far as I'm aware, this is the only thing they've made that I know of, and the game is released very much into early access. As the title of the video suggests, this is very much a spiritual successor to the Warship Gunner series, a very excellent set of PS2 games that involve building your own custom warships and sailing them on various missions. Now, it definitely doesn't hurt that Warship Gunner 2 is one of my favourite games of all time, so I was always going to be interested in this one, and thankfully it's good. Not perfect, it does have a couple of weaker aspects and a few very small flaws, but the good definitely outweighs any of these by a mile. So, to the game. At the moment, there's a short campaign of what, in my script, was written up as 10 missions, but apparently, literally since I've written it, yesterday, they've added a new one, which is this one here, which I haven't seen yet. You take control of your little ship, this is my one, take on these various missions to fight a rogue military force called Jormungandr, who are making a bit of a plot for world domination even, while also protecting a prototype floating dock called I believe the Ratosk, which the enemy is attempting to steal. It's very reminiscent of Skidblathnir from Warship Gunner 2, only it actually shows up in missions occasionally. It's also hilarious. When you actually see it in movement, it's kind of very funny. Caught me a lot off guard with that one. With the help of the aforementioned Ratosk, you're able to create, build, and modify new ships on the fly, adapting yourself to suit your current mission that you're going on. So, for example, if you're getting swarmed by aircraft, you could put some more flak guns on your ship. If you need some more firepower, you can mount some bigger guns and some larger torpedoes. The ship designer will get a full going over later, but I'd actually say in some ways it's probably better than Naval Ops's. Oh, and to explain that last quickly, Warship Gunner 1 is called Naval Ops, and I often get the names confused. Yeah, just to be a little confusing. As far as your opponents go, you'll be facing quite a wide range of ships, even just in this early version of the game. Destroyers, like these DD gunships, are fast and have powerful torpedoes, though they can be kitted out for other things. Cruisers, which I believe there are some later in this level, are kind of all-rounders. They're a bit tougher with bigger guns. Battleships are tanky enemies with very powerful guns that are... I thought they would be quite long range. They're not enormously so at the moment, but they are definitely fairly long range. I believe they could be longer range if they were player controlled, but the AI doesn't fire at those distances. Carriers constantly spawn aircraft like the ones I'm fighting here, although the land-based runways over there will also do exactly the same thing. And there's also submarines that will attack you from below the water and require special anti-submarine weapons to fight. Alongside this, there's one boss so far, a flying battleship, though I am 100% certain there are going to be more later, because the models for them are in the game already, and also, as I found out from that new mission, though I won't spoil it yet, there's another one already in the game that's ready to go. I will admit, though, that the flying carrier was that was interesting. I had a few issues with that, and we'll get to that later, but it was enjoyable. Enemy ships will also, as you've probably noticed by the green repair box I picked up earlier, occasionally drop containers. Purple ones will drop technology that you will then unlock for use on your own vessels. The red boxes carry ammunition, where we'll refill a small portion of ammunition to all of your weapons. You don't have to select the ammunition or select the weapon you want to refuel, like in Warship Gunner 2 or 1. It will just automatically refill all of them a bit. And I believe that is all of them. Oh, the green ones will repair your ship, a varying amount between a quarter of your health to... I don't know if they go up to 100. I think the highest I've seen is 75%. And that'll help you keep going for some of those longer missions where you, well, would be knocked out fairly quickly. Surprisingly enough, though, despite quite a wide variety of options and a lot of things that could potentially go wrong, balance-wise, the game actually works rather well. You'll be able to push through a few missions with a brand new ship if you've built it competently, but every now and then you'll come up against an obstacle that requires something a little bit stronger or perhaps just different to fight, and at that point you'll have to head to the shipyard. The game's editor is, as I've vaguely mentioned earlier, I would say pretty well made. Ships are made out of several parts, but the first is your hull. Now for destroyers, I've unlocked a fair few over the course of the campaign, but I figure for this video I'll make a cruiser to show it off, since I've just unlocked one of them in the previous mission. Once you've picked out a hull, which will affect a whole bunch of characteristics, you'll want to start kitting them out. probably, first of all, you're best to start with your ship's engines. These will affect your maximum speed. You run 2 turbines on a destroyer, but I wonder if you can maybe run more on carriers? No. Ah, I see. So in this, it's limited by the number of propellers. Okay, I wasn't quite sure how that worked. Honestly, I'd seen it mentioned that that was a thing, but that now makes more sense. You'll then need boilers to provide power up to your maximum power. Yeah, the way they differentiate turbines and boilers in this game, aside from the limited propellers, is that boilers provide the power to the turbines, and the maximum power the turbines can use determines how many boilers you actually need. It's a little bit more complicated than Warship Gunner's system, but I think it's a welcome improvement and one that makes perfect sense. You'll also have to ventilate these boilers, but we'll do that in a moment once we've got a bridge fitted. Your bridge, effectively, is the command center for your ship, and apparently on this particular vessel, I only have 2. You'll need at least a forward bridge to command the ship from, but you can also additionally add a rear bridge. This bridge will, as you can see here, affect how many slots you have for your control systems, and also your command stat, which is how many AA guns you can... well, it's not how many AA guns you control, but it's like how much anti-aircraft and point defense fire you can kind of have running at once. We'll fit the front bridge there as a bit of a guess. However, for additional space for subsystems, you can also add, and I will be doing so to make it look fairly nice, what they call superstructure, which is effectively a sort of extra set of boxes. The game does take into account if they overlap. You do lose a little bit if they overlap. But I think this is an excellent way of having ships be incentivized to use superstructures and a way to have them and design your own, which is something that, again, Warship kind of sorely lacked. I'm sorry if it gets compared a lot in this video, but it is very much the closest thing to it, so I feel like it's a fair comparison. Then, like I said, we'll fit vents. So for cruisers, apparently I have the new Hawkins vent, which exhausts 5. Now I need to vent 12 exhaust off, so I'll have 2 of those, and then we'll fit a... Since you can mix and match in this one, another new thing, we'll also fit a single destroyer vent in the middle to vent off the rest of it. It's a little unusual looking layout, but game lets me do it, so we'll take it. Next up, we probably want some guns, or at least some weaponry. Main guns are your kind of bread and butter. They have good firing arcs, decent damage, excellent range, and something that was more important than this that I realised, very good ammo. They can carry a lot of shots normally. Now, I could go all the way up to 8-inch guns, which are a new thing I've unlocked, but I actually might stick with the 6-inch ones for now because I have larger mounts. Because they've got more barrels, they'll be firing more shots per volley. You can use the shift key to adjust the height, and as you can see, they actually have a firing angle, which is another thing that's different from Warship Gunner, and I actually think that is a very big improvement. Oh, I can mount them even higher. No, maybe I can't. That was unusual. But yes, you actually have to take into account the clearance on your guns and their positioning. Also fit some at the rear because we might need to shoot backwards as well. You do need to keep account your weight, but because this is the first cruiser hull, it can actually hold significantly more weight than any of the destroyers I've built so far, so it might be less of an issue here. We'll actually fit a lower gun on the rear, why not? It's like a little unusual. Next up, in fact, we might move that gun a little further back because of what we want to fit next. Next on the weapons options is torpedoes. These are basically an explosive tube that goes through the water if for some reason you don't know what a torpedo is. Yeah, as you can see, they tend to have quite limited firing arcs. We're going to put them on the back here. I guess that orange... I've never been quite sure what that square is, but I'm assuming you can't have that on the deck or it won't be able to launch. We'll put those there. Torpedoes do quite high damage and move in a sort of fan-like spread, making them excellent anti-ship weapons, but they obviously can't engage other targets, and their ammunition is not enormous. It's pretty decent, but you will run out eventually, so keep that in mind. ASW, or anti-submarine weapons, are exactly what they sound like. They're weapons specifically built to fight submarines. We're going to have some Hedgehog launchers, and in a little thing that I really like, the Hedgehog launchers actually fire in the proper spray like you kind of expect them to. I really like that little addition. In the fire category, you get the flamethrower. This didn't do a huge amount of damage during my testing. It's apparently intended to be a short-range weapon with supposedly high damage potential, but again, I don't know whether it's not working 100% or just that by the time I had fitted it, it wasn't very good, but it didn't seem very good to me. Mine layers unsurprisingly drop mines. They're not a weapon I've used before, but I'm going to try them on this ship. I'm just going to quickly check. Yep, the firing arc on that. Do keep an eye on the firing arcs of your main guns, because one of the things that I had an issue with throughout the game was accidentally not doing that and then having some problems actually being able to aim my weapons. Anti-ship rockets are exactly what they sound like. They kind of fire off it like a constant barrage. They weren't very accurate when I used them, and they burn up their ammo very quickly, but they do quite significant damage if they can hit. In oddities, you get weird weapons, and I have to admit, I've not tried the mortar yet, but I'm going to do that for this, because why not? Supposedly it lobs a bomb in a big arc. I'm kind of interested to see how this goes. Then, lastly, you have point defense. And this is an important one because this is your anti-aircraft, and I believe some weapons can be set up to fire at torpedoes as well. I'm going to fit the better of the two I have. As you can see, they require one command, so I can fit 22 of these. And thankfully, on this much larger hull, I can mount them out the front while they're not in the way of the main guns. Have some on the around the thing. You could also fit them on your superstructures. Certain lightweight weapons such as these. How many command have we got left? We've got 8 more. Fit a few more. Will be in the way of that? Nope. Usually, as a rule of thumb on real warships, you want as many of these as you can fit. Literally. Like, how much anti-aircraft for World War II era battleships is too much? There isn't too much. And that's your weapons. But there's a bit more to do. Next up, let's make it look nice. You have a few options for this. First of all is the flags. They've got some, what I think are really cool, like, remakes on nations' flags. I really like the Germany one, even though I don't know if it's meant to look like a bird. I really like that one. Japan one's nice as well. Like, flags of the villains, Jormungandr. You can just be a pirate, and more pride flags than I've ever seen in one place in one game. I genuinely had not even heard of some of these. So I guess if you're into that, cool. I've stuck with the German flag personally for all of my ships, but if you click that little folder button, as it says, you can upload your own, and that same goes for camouflage schemes and also images. I don't believe the game starts with any images, but it does start with a handful of camouflage schemes. So we'll do what I kind of did for one of my previous ships. Let's have this in yellow and black. There is actually an additional point I will make on the camouflage schemes, but we'll get to that later. But it was something I hadn't really fully expected. One thing I will mention now, though, is that you should be aware that the camouflage scheme actually does go over your bridge in some of the superstructure bits as well. I didn't realise that, so it's a bit of an unusual look. Next up, something I realised I've forgotten before we get to some of the last bits. You've got your secondary systems and your specials. Your secondary systems require the slots that you get from your bridges, I believe, normally. And they can be used to activate certain special bonuses. For example, you can have a better radar that can see ships from further away on your minimap. You can have the scavenger perk that, like it says, gives you extra things from crates and things. I am going to take autoloader 3 because I have plenty of auxiliary space. You can upgrade the systems, which will take up more space. I'm going to have fire control to increase accuracy. Yeah, unlike in Warship Gunner, again, I know I compare the two a lot, but it was going to happen. You're not required to have a radar and a sonar filling up the slots by default. I am going to take the best radar I can get. It's apparently radar 4. I don't remember unlocking that, but cool. Then, you've got your specials. There's one here I have not... Well, in fact, there's a couple here I have not tried yet, so I'm going to try some of the new ones I've unlocked. We'll take the shield. We'll take the EMP, and we'll still keep overdrive, because that's been very useful in the past. And the last section of actual components is the MISC section. Now, as far as I'm aware, I've never unlocked anything for these. I don't know if there is much you can unlock. But there's a couple of functional parts among the decorative parts. The crane lets you pick up crates from further away. This is actually surprisingly helpful. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but this has actually been quite useful because that includes the health crates. So I'm going to fit a couple of those and just check they're not in place with the torpedo launchers. They are not. And search like supposedly light up aircraft at night. I don't know how much of an effect this has, but I'm going to fit some just in case. Yeah, we'll put some there. I like to try and make ships that look like they could be somewhat functional. Probably the guns on this one look a tiny bit weedy, but I like to think it looks alright. Additionally, while that's all the parts I've unlocked through the demo so far, there's also an extra little button. If you go to the menu and scroll all the way to the bottom, there's this. As it says, if you don't care about the difficulty curve, you can press that button and that will unlock everything. That includes parts you're not supposed to use, aka boss parts, including the hull for that flying battleship, and also various other little things like transports, and bits of bosses that aren't in the game yet, like a flying railway track. Yeah, I'm not sure what they're going with that one, but oh boy, believe me, I am eager to find out where that is going. And they work. You can build your ships on them. They've actually kitted them out properly. You can put the decks on them. You can build at ship classes that aren't a lot in the game, including battleships and things. And there's a lot of parts in there. I did not realise they've already got that many working. Well, I'll quickly show off the armour thing just to quickly show you what that is. It's not complicated. It's basically you set the, well, how many tons of armour you want. Take 10-inch armour. That's thicker than anything I've had on any previous ships. Yes, we're sailing the YouTube. I should have mentioned that the game is also actually pretty funny at times. I don't really want to spoil why, because it absolutely would not have worked if I'd been aware of it. But there was one ambush in particular that I absolutely cracked up at. It caught me so off guard. It was great. It was just great. And not to mention, again, one particular mention with the Ratosk, moment with the Ratosk even. And also the fact that they sometimes even drop ships, and not even just the PT boats. It goes all the way up to cruisers via parachute. Yeah, that one caught me a lot off guard. I also very much like the flying battleships captain. He was quite fun. I had a feeling he would be when I first saw him, and yeah, he was. Now, the game isn't perfect. It is good, but it's not, like I say, not perfect. We'll run maybe this mission for a bit of background footage. I didn't encounter any gameplay breaking bugs, anything where the game didn't seem to be working as intended, but I did come across a few bits. We're back at the same mission. Oh, well, here we go. We'll do it again with a better hull. I am very slow feeling compared to my destroyer. There was one particular moment, I think you actually see it earlier in the video, where there also seems to be a bit of an issue today with the... Nope, ignore me devs, it's not an issue with the controls, it's my keyboard being on the wrong setting, don't worry about that one. There was an issue, as I said earlier, in the campaign where the dam, the mission where you have to break through the dam, the command center for the defenses renders with what I think are maybe broken smoothing groups. It looks like they're all set to smooth, and it's got this sort of weird shiny look that doesn't look quite right. As a dev myself, I've done some stuff with Blender, and it kind of looks like what happens when you don't set the smoothing groups. So I could be wrong. It could be an LOD model, perhaps, but it doesn't feel like it, considering this game is not, as you can probably see, hugely high poly. I believe it's a very small dev team, so I obviously, unsurprisingly, it's not the highest graphic budget, and it really doesn't need it. The gameplay is definitely the key here. Additionally, when I was fighting the flying... I have it written down as carrier here for some reason. The flying battleship, I died at least twice during the cutscene of it crashing. At the time, I didn't really quite understand what was going on, but I think I worked it out later when I specifically went into the editor to have a look at the unlock the text option. The battleship has effectively an invisible weapon system on the turbines that does damage when it flies over you. Now that makes perfect sense, but I wasn't aware of that during the fight because of the bombs it drops. It drops a lot of bombs with these big target markers to warn you where they're going to land. Very hard to dodge, actually. And I thought I was taking damage from those, so I never realised it had this thing. And I think what happened was that I would sink it, I'd be underneath this thing because getting closest was the easy way to fight it, and then I would die from the damage while the cutscene was going because it hadn't technically died yet. Maybe that's my suspicion of what was perhaps going on there. I also at the time started to wonder whether it was falling on me, like whether it's like, oh, is this not like Archaeopteryx from Warship Gunner? Is this if this falls on me, it actually does kill you? Like, it made perfect sense. I just hadn't thought of it. So I put it down to that at the time. I don't know. Eventually I ended up fighting it from a distance. I did beat it. But the biggest problem, and this is not an enormous thing, but it was a problem to me, was the guns. As I mentioned, early on, I had a few ships with guns that didn't work properly. I'd set them up properly at the time when I placed them, but I then placed things like AA guns later. that had blocked the firing angle. Now, again, this is on its own isn't an issue, but I didn't realise that the AA guns would affect the firing angle, because they're normally not a problem. And actually checking it meant that I had to pick up every gun one at a time and then replace them. I feel like maybe some kind of option to just, maybe a button to press to just see all the firing arcs at once could be perhaps a good solution here. It's not critical, but it is something I would recommend you maybe have a look at. Oh, there's yeah, there we go. There's a tribal being dropped by parachute. Whee! And the last thing I have to say is it is a short game now. Again, as I mentioned earlier, apparently they've added another level just since I made the review yesterday. Made the script for the review yesterday. So, as you can probably tell, it's definitely being quite regularly updated at the moment. I believe I saw somewhere on Discord that Dev wanted to have this done within a year or two. Something along those lines, or 3 years. So I imagine it's going to be a fairly active development. I believe the plan is to have about 35 levels in the finished game, and I think there's about 11 at the moment. So it's in a good state. But it is short, and it is an early access, so do keep that in mind if you're thinking of getting it. Still, at the end of the day, these problems are all solvable. Most of them are, in fact, just really only minor technical issues. Oh boy, I'm dying. Both short so far, and I think, like this fight, it might be cut even shorter. I have enjoyed my time with this game a lot. Especially since I've discovered how many parts are accessible in the editor. I'm almost certainly going to go and mess around and build some battleships and things to see how much you could steamroll the campaign, try some of the cool energy weapons and things that aren't accessible. I'm definitely going to be coming back to this game as well as it continues development to try all the new stuff. There's a new boss I've got to try after I finish this review and finishing editing and everything. It's obviously a shorter and less feature-packed game than Warship Gunner, but at the end of the day, it was never going to be bigger than it. It's a much smaller team. They don't have the budget. And I think what it does have to counteract that is the heart. They clearly, like the series. They clearly knew what the fans would want with it. It's already a good deal of it packed in. And again, the only two things I can really think of that are missing from, like, for example, their bigger brother, their old, or whatever you want to call it, the Naval series, are carriers and submarines. And they were, I hate to say it, but they were some of the weaker aspects. Like, carriers were dreadful. Like, if you could barely direct the planes until right through the game, and that's only in the second one. You couldn't even do that in the first one. And if you lost all of them, which, remember, these are AI controlled. Like, in the first game, not only did you have to refit them all yourself, but even in the second game, like, they weren't really strong enough to carry you through most of the later missions. And the submarines are okay, but they were clearly, like, not that finished in mechanics. So I really don't think, even with the bits they are missing, that we're really missing all that much. So, yes. At the end of the day, excellent little game. Huge potential. Absolutely huge potential. I'm sure they're going to be doing more with this. And I have to admit, it's another example of this very much modern thing of if you're not going to... Oh, there's the mortar. If the game companies aren't going to make the games that people want to play, the fans are going to give it a crack themselves, and they could do a very good job of it. So yeah, Waves of Steel. Oh boy. My shit disappears below the waves. Go play it. Support the devs. And well, that's the end of the review. If you wanted to very kindly support another indie dev, leave any likes, comments, subscriptions, whatever, in the various places below. I've also got my own game too, called IORC. It's about being effectively the fire service equivalent for space debris, chasing it down with ships and things, try to stop it before it smashes into the ground. It's fun. Go play it too if you're feeling generous. I've linked both in the description. Who knows what next week's review will bring, but either way, I hope to see you there for it.